Well, today is Father's Day. And it's right that we should stop and we should honor fathers. It is important that we take time to speak on the significance of fatherhood, not only on special occasions like on Father's Day, but as a matter of course because the role of the father is being significantly attacked and destroyed in our culture. Our society has attacked the role of fathers with such devastating force that sociologists now believe we have sentenced the next generation to disastrous consequences because of this devaluation of the role of the father. On the plan of God, however, that's not the way it's supposed to be. Whatever may be happening in society, we have a responsibility as Christian fathers to step up to the plate and execute the role that God has assigned to our hearts and hands to do. What then is the role of a Christian father in today's compromising society? In reading Ephesians 6, 1-4, we can see three roles that God desires us as fathers to play in the lives of our children He has entrusted to our care. 1. Christian fathers won't provoke their children's wrath. The first thing Paul says to fathers is a word of warning. Don't provoke your children. Now this doesn't mean what you think. I don't know any dad that hasn't made his children mad. I do it quite often. I think it's the daddy manual right after taking out the trash. Daddies make everybody mad every once in a while. I think most fathers here can agree with me on that, can't you? It's not always hunky-dory, it's not always smooth sailing. Sometimes daddies are the ones that say, no, it's not happening. Put your foot down. After all, dads often have to say no, right? Dads discipline. Dads enforce the rules of the family. I remember as a child, if I was misbehaving, my mother would not discipline me. It was something she wouldn't do. But she'd say, you wait till your father comes home. You're going to get it when your father comes home. And I didn't get a whole lot, mind you. I wasn't beaten as a child by any stretch. But I was disciplined if I got out of line. If I did something that was wrong, if I said a bad word to my mother or my teacher, or did something that wasn't right, I was taken and I was disciplined for my behavior. So it is dads, generally, and I would say most people probably would concur with me, that it was the dads that enforced the rules of the family. But in all of this, a godly Christian dad should never act out of anger. But his actions, no matter how infatuating, are done out of love. It's when a child doesn't get that message of undying, unending love that his wrath is kindled. One of the biggest problems of modern society is what psychologists call daddy longing. Daddies are not there to discipline in love, or if they are there, they are too busy to show that they care. Today's children of divorced culture, broken homes, and latchkey kids are angry. You see, discipline isn't what provokes wrath. It's the lack of love that makes children angry and causes problems. Proverbs 3:11-12 tells us, my son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in. We have to discipline. And I can honestly say, in today's society, that's probably the biggest thing that's wrong with our society today. There's no consequences to actions. Fathers are missing. Fathers are lacking in their duty. They're lacking in their responsibility. We have to get back to basics. We have to be the men that God called us to be and desires us to be when He entrusts us with the lives of our children. We have to be godly fathers. Number 2, Christian fathers bring children up with nurture. The second thing Paul says to fathers is a word of counsel. After telling dads what not to do, he says what you should do is give children plenty of nurturing. Now what does that mean? What does it look like? Some people say rearing children, I don't like that. It sounds like pushing them to the rear. I like them, to bring them up. The Bible says raise or bring them up. How are we supposed to raise them up? In the nurture of the Lord. Just like a farmer raises tender plants and waters them and covers them from the frost and feeds them fertilizer so they'll grow tall and produce harvest. So fathers are to nurture their children in the Lord. Now someone will say that that's just spoiling them. No. You don't have to give them everything they want. That's not called nurturing. That's called grandparenting. Because if Mommy or Daddy says no, call Nan and Pop. Nan and Pop will get it for you. Biblical nurture is laying a godly foundation in love and by example. It requires time and it requires attention. Deuteronomy 6:4-9 says this about nurturing your children. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God. The Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them to your foreheads. Write them on the doorframes of your houses and on your gates. We are to instruct. We are to teach our children. We are to love them. We are to nurture them. It's not just mothers who nurture. As fathers, we're supposed to give them time and attention that they desire and that they need so our children can grow up in God's love and God's guidance. The third thing that Paul says is Christian fathers bring children up with reproach. It's a word of encouragement. After counseling them to nurture their children, he also encourages dads to admonish their children. This is the heart of being a dad. In this entire section, Paul is giving instruction to Christian parents. The idea is that God designed the Christian home to consist of a mother and a father, each fulfilling their respective roles. Everyone knows that God made mothers to be the best at nurturing, right? If you've got a problem, if you've got a boo-boo, who do you run to? Mom. Mom is there. But dads are not to abandon their responsibility. We're to come right alongside our wives in the process of childbearing and nurturing as well. But where fathers must really step into the plate is in the area of admonishing their children. And what does this mean? To admonish means to teach. Dads must teach their children the important lessons of life. As dads, we must understand and know that if we don't teach our children how to work, the world will teach them how to steal. If we don't teach our children honesty, the world will teach them to be a cheat. If we don't teach our children respect, the world will certainly teach them to be disrespectful. If there's anything in shortage today, it's the fathers who take responsibility for the actions and take care of the financial, the spiritual, emotional well-beings of their homes. Along with the roles of the father that Paul speaks about in Ephesians 6:4, I would like us to look at 6 virtues of a godly father using the acronym FATHER. Godly fathers serve God. Godly fathers are men of action. Godly fathers prepare their children for adulthood. Godly fathers take responsibility, and godly fathers are reliable. So let's look at the F in fathers. It stands for faithful. Godly fathers are faithful. Faithful people. They are first faithful to God and trust God with their whole heart, their soul, and their mind. Godly fathers believe in God's promises. They know that God will preserve their family and that the Lord will provide for their families everything that they need. Godly fathers accept their roles as a spiritual head of the household and set the tone for family worship. Fathers know God's Word. They have an active prayer life. They attend church regularly with their families, and they obey God's commandments. So we're faithful. The A in the father stands for action. Godly fathers are people of action. Godly fathers are men of action, especially when their families need them. Fathers just don't sit there and spring into action when they need to be. It's not just when the toilets need to be fixed or the garbage needs to be taken out or something needs to be fixed. Good dads know how to get things done. They solve problems and always rise to the occasion. Good fathers instill a good work ethic in their children and teach by example. Children need to see hardworking fathers and fathers who are to challenge their children to lead or learn through activity. Fathers watch over their children and give them the space they need to try new things, to learn from their mistakes. It's hard sometimes. It's hard to sit back and watch your children learn through those responsibilities. Learn by making mistakes. It's hard to do. But we must do it. That's being a part of being an engaged father, an engaged parent. The I in father stands, or the T in fathers stands for teacher. Godly fathers are good teachers. Godly fathers are teachers and prepare their children to enter adulthood and face the tough world around them. This means that fathers give their children survival skills that will help transform them into successful adults. Unfortunately, most children do not listen to the advice of their fathers. I didn't always listen to my father. But in order to be a good teacher, fathers must be creditable and earn their children's trust, their children's love. It doesn't come overnight. There's days now I look back over my childhood and I say, well, it pains me to say, but Dad was right. I don't know if you fathers feel that way sometimes. You look back at what your father said many years ago to you and say, boy, he was right. But there's times as I've become a father and I've looked back over these last 13 years of being a dad, and there's times when my father was right. When I didn't see it as a child because I was looking at my life and world in general through the child's eye. But as I look through my father's eye in that regard, I can see that he's right. Proverbs 22:6 says, start children off in the way they should go. And even when they're old, they will not turn from it. Train a child in the way he should go. When he's older, he will not depart from it. I'm sure many of you people here this morning, many of you fathers and mothers, you've trained your children in the way of God. You grew up in the church. They may not be here today, but I can guarantee you one thing, they have not forgotten those bases that you've taught your children. I'm sure as in when they go do something, they can hear that voice in the back of their heads. They know that mom and dad probably doesn't approve of some of the things that they're doing. They know that you love them. I can honestly tell you that they will never forget what they learned at home. If you've taught them the ways of God, they will never forget it. They will never forget it. The H in father stands for hope. Godly fathers offer hope to their families. We're to be a source of hope and inspiration for our families. Dads are the family's pillar of strength. And they are the ones who tell us that things will be all right when tough times come, and tough times are only around the corner. Even though dads complain, godly fathers are optimistic and resilient because they trust God. I'm telling you, fathers, don't look at the cup as half empty. The cup is always half full. No matter how hard it is, no matter what comes your way, be optimistic. God will get you through whatever's coming. Whatever you're facing in these days, and it goes for not only for the fathers, for the mothers, for the ladies, for the gentlemen. Be optimistic people. Always look at the brighter side of things. Put a smile on your face. Even in the midst of downheart troubles and trials, put a smile on your face. God will overcome all these trials and tribulations that we're going through. Our Heavenly Father is a good God. He's a good dad. He's a good father. As fathers, we must also trust our children and constantly encourage them to pursue their passions, fulfill their dreams, and plan for their future. Claire Booth once said, "Where there is no faith in the future, there is no power in the present." In contrast, good fathers are as the father found in the parable of the prodigal son. Good fathers are forever hopeful and inspiring their families to push beyond themselves. We are to bring hope to our families. The Ian father stands for example. Godly fathers are a positive example. Good impressions are more important in godly fathers. We are to be positive role models for our families. Children tend to imitate and adapt their parents' behaviors. Therefore, fathers must be good husbands. We must live moral lives and treat all people with respect and dignity. As the home spiritual leader, godly fathers take an active part in their children's spiritual development. While mothers spend more time with the children in the traditional home, the importance of the fathers' roles cannot be underestimated. And Paul's advice to the Corinthian church holds true in 1 Corinthians 11:1. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. The most important example that fathers can make to their children is to love others, but most importantly, to love Christ. The R in fathers stands for reliable. Godly fathers are reliable. We're consistent. We work hard to provide for our families. And we're helpful in times of crisis. Sadly, men today are not consistent in their fatherly duties and neglect to see the importance of their role as fathers themselves. Fathers need to be reinstated to the level of importance that God intended for them. Morally and spiritually, integrity is at an all-time low in our society. It's because we are declining value placed on the role of the father in today's society. Children need active and reliable fathers to be their role models. Newspaper columnist Abigail Van Buren wrote, "If you want your children to keep their feet on the ground, put some responsibility on their shoulders." Responsibility isn't a curse, it's a blessing. Booker T. Washington said, "Few things help an individual more than to place responsibility upon them and let them know that you can trust them." Yet in order for children to grow up into responsible adults, they need stable and reliable role models. Good fathers are consistent in how they meet life's challenges. Irresponsible people run away from their problems. Unreliable fathers make excuses for their inconsistent conduct and never lead a life of integrity. Good fathers are of proven character. They are faithful to their calling and are reliable to those who need them. Father's influence is paramount to a child's development into a happy, well-adjusted, productive adult. Fatherhood is not motherhood. However, it is an active rather than passive activity. Good fathers are involved in their children's lives and look out for their best interest. Dads have to make hard choices and realize that popular decisions are not always the best decisions. Good fathers are able to discern and develop their children's hearts, their souls, and their minds. In life, as fathers, there seems to be a general consensus that if one of our children are sick or need some tender nurturing, they will pass us for mommy. But according to one of the polls that was published a few years ago, the one thing that generally they will not seek from their mother is to be an example of how to have a right relationship with God. Research shows that children take their spiritual lead from their fathers. The finding of this poll found that if both father and mother go to church, 72% of the children will also go to church when they grow up. If only the father goes to church, the percentage drops a little bit, goes down to 55. But here's where the big drops in the statistic. If only the mother goes to church, only 15% of those children will go to church. What does that tell you? We as dads need to be doing our job. We need to be spiritual people. We oftentimes question why we have so few young people attending our church, or why this generation seems to have such little time for God, or the church for that matter. Fathers here this morning, we need to understand, and we need to be as dads to play the important role in our children's spiritual lives. They will follow in our footsteps. If the father is a regular attender to church, if he's a Christian, there's a greater chance that your children will be. I know it seems very negative. I know it seems sometimes very downing when you hear the statistics of what's happening in our church today and in our society. I really struggled with it. I was telling Bruce this week, I had most of this sermon written. And because of a technical issue, I lost it again. Had to sit down and try to redevelop my thoughts, and really struggled with it because it's something that is dear to my own heart. And I looked at my own life and I thought, how am I as a dad? Am I living up to my role? Am I living up to my spiritual role as a dad? Do my children see the love of Christ in me? Do I give them responsibility? Am I too hard on them sometimes? Do I not give them enough leeway? And I really looked at my own life. But I'm doing the best I can because I look to God. It's not my own will, it's not my own doing. And sometimes I make mistakes. I often make mistakes, let's be honest. Being a dad is learning from your mistakes sometimes just as much as children. But today we honor fathers and we thank God for His grace and wisdom in instituting the Christian family. Lord, that we will strive to get back to the blueprint that God designed. Let us to be the role models that God desires us to be, fathers of faith, fathers who lead with our lives, not just with our words. We must show godly virtues to our children if we desire them to live godly lives this morning. Shall we pray?